Reseda, California is one of the most suburban suburbs nestled in the San Fernando Valley of Englewood, where sunshine is plenty and lawns are impeccable. Childhoods here are idyllic, with most families squarely set in the middle class. So, how is it that a child raised here would grow up to be known for one of the largest investment frauds ever perpetrated by a single person, as well as one of the largest accounting frauds in history? We're going to dive into the sordid details and then share with you how quick growth can actually be the ruin of your business. Welcome to our show, The Business Behind Small Business. Whether you're selling or staying, we're here to remind you that just because you own a business does not mean you are a business owner. We are your hosts, Sevana Stone and
Tiffany Ko,
sharing the more finite details of entrepreneurship, revealing the dots between startup and success. No one gets to a million without getting a little dirty, especially in this case. There's a lot of business behind small business, so let's get to it. Before we begin, please note our disclaimer. This is available in both our show notes and on our website and should be referred to before and or after this podcast. Barry Minkow grew up in a middle-class Jewish family where his mother managed a carpet cleaning business, and I don't really know a whole lot about his father, couldn't find it, but that's okay. Point of this is for you to focus on the carpet cleaning business. Barry may have been born middle class, but it was clear he had no intention of staying there. Even at a young age, his eyes twinkled with entrepreneurship. So, at the age of 9, his mother got him a job at her workplace as a telemarketer. Barry worked there in between going to school, and at the age of 16, Minkow started his own carpet cleaning company. He named his company Z Best, or is it Z Best? I don't know.
Is it
It's four Z's and then
ZZZ?
ZZZZ
Best.
Side note, it makes me think of like a bee company, not a carpet company, but whatever. Minkow ran his business. Minkow ran his business in his parents' garage with 3 employees and 4 phones. Success did not come easy for Barry. He relied on friends to drive him to cleaning jobs since he had yet to get a license. 2 banks closed his business account because California law of the time did not allow minors to sign binding contracts, including checks. But this was the least of his
I can
problem.
see why that's important.
Oh, totally. And this kind of starts off as being like, oh, look at this entrepreneur who goes on to great things. No, nay. Barry was inundated by customer complaints and demands for payments from suppliers. There were times he wasn't even able to make payroll. Barry's resources were dwindling, and his dreams of caviar and wishes for champagne were beginning to feel like a fantasy. Instead of bootstrapping or finding more legal or moral avenues, Minkow financed his business via check kiting, stealing and selling his grandmother's jewelry, staging break-ins at his offices, and running up fraudulent credit card charges. In doing this, Barry found he'd stumbled across a business that would help him hit it big. Wasn't really a business, though, was it? Minkow decided to pivot into insurance restoration, and with the help of his friend and claims adjuster, Minkow forged documents, created a fake company, and waited for the money to come pouring in. In 1986, Barry actually took his company public. So how was he able to do that with a Ponzi scheme? Well, his accountant, the one that audited Z Best before it went public, didn't visit any of the sites. If he had, he would have found mailboxes with no real businesses attached to them. Minkow continued
you have
to
to
soar
fake
to
a
even
decent
bigger
size to go public, right?
I mean, like a whole heck of a lot. And remember, this all started because he was having cash flow issues because of how quickly he was growing. So Minkow continued to soar to bigger heights by launching a massive television advertising campaign. To Barry, Z Best would become the General Motors. True story. The General Motors of the carpet cleaning industry. Well, all of this is true story, but I meant like verbatim. With his earnings, he bought a Ferrari, a BMW, and a mansion in the wealthy community of Woodland Hills. In 1 year, Z Best was trading at $18 a share and was valued at $280 million. The company had 1,030 employees with offices in California, Arizona, and Nevada. Whew. Barry was starting to feel the heat, though.
Were
He
these
knew he was
real
finally
employees?
real employees, real people who probably didn't know what they were doing. They just knew they had a job. Knowing he was finally achieving his dreams of success, he was worried it would all come down. Really? If he didn't peel away the Ponzi scheme part that he'd created and made Z-Best a legitimate, reputable company. So a lot like Peaky Blinders. He had to separate the con from the legitimate so that he could continue on in the legitimate part. So Minkow knew that the only way was to buy KeyServe, Sears's authorized carpet cleaner. The deal was for $25 million. Barry was salivating at the sheer power of it all and began planning to buy ServiceMaster out with a raised $800 million, expanding into the UK and just the rest of the world. His dreams were huge. He wanted everything. And he had even begun discussions to buy baseball's Seattle Mariners. The world was positioning into his greasy palm, just the way he'd planned it since he was a child. Meanwhile, back in the valley, a homemaker was broiling in anger. She'd hired Z Best to clean her carpet. She was excited for the experience. I mean, she'd heard so much. She'd expected excellent service. However, she did not expect to be overcharged. It was such a hassle, to be sure, but she figured he had such a great reputation, it's not going to be difficult for her to be refunded, and it was probably just a user error. She didn't realize it would be such an uphill battle. The longer it took for her to get her refund, the angrier she got. She had heard that Barry had paid back others who had been wrongly charged, and she was starting to suspect this was not a situation of user error. Maybe this was an actual crime. She grabbed her notebook and started tracking down others who were in the same predicament as her. She was shocked by how many people Minkow had defrauded, but as shocked as she was, she took meticulous notes, knowing she was going to get him. Oh, she was going to get him. She worked her way all the way to the LA Times and convinced them to do a story. She handed them her notebook with all of her meticulous notes. Barry should never have ignored her. The story ran days before the merger was to close, and it sent Z-Best stock plunging. But that was just the iceberg tip of what brought down Barry Minkow. Eventually, Minkow and 10 other insiders were indicted by a federal grand jury on 54 counts of racketeering, securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, mail fraud, tax evasion, and bank fraud. It's a lot of fraud. The indictment also accused him of frauder, and like Oprah, you get fraud, and you get fraud, and you get fraud. Yeah. The indictment also accused him.
It's a lot of F words.
A lot of F words. The indictment also accused him of milking banks and investors of millions of dollars and setting up dummy companies with phony invoices with as much as 90% of the company's revenue actually being fraudulent. Of course, there's a lot more to this story, and although we may not have the time, we definitely have the topic. Barry was malicious in his dealings, and sometimes, as a business owner, you have to be very calculating with your growth. And if you're not paying attention, you will find yourself on that slippery slope. And what you don't know really can hurt you and eventually cost you your business. But before we switch gears, we're going to take a break.
Wouldn't it be great to hear the sound of us promoting your business for you right here on our show? Of course it would. You can have that and more by producing a show or multiple shows. All you have to do is email us at thebusinessbehindSmallBusiness@gmail.com to express your interest, and we will share with you what you will receive with your investment. You'll have the opportunity to have your name and the name of your business mentioned multiple times on our show, having your company logo on our social media, along with details on how to get in touch with you and other marketing opportunities as well. Please support us so that we can continue supporting you.
So to me, Barry sounds just a little bit shady all around. A little bit.
Just a touch.
I do wonder if he started out with any intentions of, shysting his way in or something through, to success. Because he sounded like he started pretty early on.
Yeah, I think that he had these grandiose ideas of himself. And when he started out with his mom, that was the direction he was going to go in. I think he kind of fell into the crime part as a way to supplement a growth that he could not support. And then he was like, oh, hey, this just came a little too easy for him. So he was one of those big minds that could either become a CEO or a criminal, and he chose criminal.
Whoa, yeah. I mean, I think there was somewhere they were saying that like entrepreneurs are like, or like, is it entrepreneurs or that most everybody's a psychopath or something? I can't remember what the...
Yeah, highly successful people. Yeah,
highly functioning psychopaths, right?
Yeah.
So I guess you can go either way.
Totally. And that's absolutely, like, I think that he could have achieved anything if he put his mind to it. I think the part that made him go in the dark place is that he was expecting it to happen faster than it did. And then when it happened when it did finally pick up traction, he was not prepared for it because he was constantly looking forward and not looking backwards into the internal structure of his business.
Yeah, it didn't sound like he also spent a lot of time actually building substance in his business, right? Because he wanted the superficial success, which, when did this take place?
1985, I believe.
I mean, it's kind of scary because we're dealing with that now where people are chasing superficial success because that's all you see on social media. These overnight success. And I think that's where it gets people in trouble, like you say, is that if they actually get the momentum and they get a lot of customers and they're growing, things start falling apart. Yeah, so I would say that today, certainly the takeaway and the moral of the story is, well, don't make desperate decisions in desperate times with a desperate mindset.
Absolutely.
Might be a little easier for you to get, fall off that slope, do things you probably otherwise would not intend to do. But the other couple things, I was thinking about while you're talking is just that very real problem that a lot of owners get into, which is when success hits, you don't have the infrastructure to support it because you're so busy trying to look for the next customer and the next big growth, or in his case, going public. That's a big monumental step, but you're not doing all the things you need to do internally to make sure you can support all that. So too much business can be an actual problem for business owners.
Right.
And I would say it comes down to a couple things is that one, quality control always suffers, especially in growth. It's so easy for any business owner to have quality control when they are themselves in the business. So, they're doing all of the things and it's very easy to instill quality control. But when you get more customers, what happens is you have to hire somebody to be able to support delivery to those customers, and you need them to perform at the same level you are, and that's where problems happen. And that process of getting somebody hired and getting somebody to deliver and emulate basically how you want things done is incredibly hard. I think much harder than most people know with that first hire, and you quickly realize how, at least for me too, like how lacking your skills and communications are, how what you say may end up not what was being heard, and it's not like malicious intention of the other party, it's just that you weren't clear in communicating what you wanted. And that on top of having to manage the new person while you're still juggling your existing customers, and all this balance takes a lot of energy. And if you're already operating at 110% in your business, man, that's just tiring at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think like the underestimation of business owners when it comes to your first hire and getting your hire set up to be able to support you in a business is really what is a downfall for a lot of businesses that are scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
No matter, and here's the thing, and I know Savannah, you can attest to this, like no matter how good the hire is that you have, you may find somebody that you're like, that person really knows what they're talking about. They're coming with experience. I can't believe they actually want to work for my little old business,
Mm-hmm.
but they're going to be a heavy hitter. No matter how good that person is when they come in through the door, you still have to train them. Yeah. You have to spend time teaching them to do how you do things in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And this takes repetition, this takes reinforcement, and it just takes time for this stuff to sink in.
And
And
writing
during
down
this
processes.
period, well, there is that, right?
Mhm.
That helps because
Yeah.
then like they don't have to come bother you for every little question. They have something to reference, because otherwise
Right.
if you don't write it down and they're new to the process, they're
Mhm.
not going to know the nuances of what they're missing. Eventually they're going to have a question and then they're going to bug you about it. And
Right.
here you are already way over your head and trying to keep up with customer demands. I mean, when are you going to find the time to stop and answer questions and train
Mhm.
your new hire? It's really hard.
Mhm.
So I think that if owners could be have a little more foresight into making sure that before they hire the new person, their first employee, even your second one, if you have a different position, like you're ready internally to bring them on and train them, and make sure that you have processes and controls in place so that your quality doesn't suffer
Yep.
while this is happening.
Mhm.
The other thing too is I noticed that Barry, our buddy Barry here, seemed to have been owing a lot of money everywhere
Mhm.
while he
Yep.
was growing.
Yep.
Yeah, as a business owner, especially if you're in some kind of business that requires credit from your supplier, do not let your supplier hound you for payment. This is where
Right.
you're already in trouble.
Right.
It absolutely kills your business credit, first of all, which is not the same thing as your personal credit, but it could lend itself to that if you're using a personal guarantee or your personal credit to
Mhm.
actually have started working with that supplier. And if you have any kind of and just to clarify, if you have credit with your supplier, it just means that they're willing to extend time to you from when you buy the uh, supplies or materials, from
Mhm.
when you buy it and they ship it to you to when you actually have to pay it. So sometimes they'll
Mhm.
extend like a 30-day or 60-day credit. So it gives you time to be able to essentially meet your customer demands and have your customer pay you before you have to pay your supplier. And that's why that setup is so important, because you need that float time in between. But when they extend that to you and you decide you don't want to pay them, you end up they'll one get really mad at you and call you all the
Mhm.
time. But
Mhm.
more importantly than that, they'll probably report you to like the business credit bureaus, which means it kind of kills your credit, and then it'll be hard for you to get credit from other suppliers. And this could also potentially affect how you can get commercial loans in the future
Also,
using your business.
I mean, this is a different topic, but also to keep in mind that if you commingle your accounts, or if you have a business account that you use as a personal account, let's say if you
Hmm.
have two business accounts, the one you use for business, the other one you use as personal, that creates such a muddy line that if they wanted to come after you, they could also come after your personal your personal
Yes.
assets.
Yes. And you see that happen a lot too when businesses get desperate for cash.
Mm-hmm.
They end up using maybe their personal credit cards to basically
Yep.
fund their business,
Yep.
which one ruins your personal credit as
Mm-hmm.
well, especially if you're not paying it back readily. But then at the
Mm-hmm.
same time, like you're saying, like you muddy those lines, you muddy those waters,
Mm-hmm.
and in the future, if you're out looking for more people to lend you money, they'll absolutely see that and shut you down, because
Yeah.
who would want to lend you money like that when it's
Right.
clear you're in a desperate situation?
Or they'll take you
So
to court. And this is another situation. They could take you to court, and
yes.
if they win, then they can also get the money from your personal, like not just from your business. So there, that veil, if you will be gone.
Yeah. I'm sure people have heard that whole phrase, piercing the corporate veil. And
Hmm.
that's very much relevant. There's still cases, even as recent as this year or last year,
Yeah.
where the judgment was against the owner, because they basically pierced the corporate veil, meaning that they didn't treat their corporation as a separate entity from their personal, which
Right.
means that whoever is coming after them not only can come after them for their business assets, but they can come after
Hmm.
them for their personal assets,
Right.
which is huge because the whole point
Right.
of incorporating is to be able to have that separation of liability.
Hmm. Yep.
And so that's just not a great position to be in. So, um, of course, like there are ways to prevent this. I don't think most people go into business looking to scam somebody.
True.
I doubt Barry did. Maybe his ego got to him a little bit.
So that's what I'm saying. I
Um,
think that he discovered something and was like, oh, if I just do a
yeah.
little bit of it, no one will notice. And then it just got, I think, ahead of him. And so did his greed.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I think, you know, not that Barry would have heeded any of these recommendations,
No.
but there's quite a few of really easy things that any business owner can do to basically stay on top of their cash flow. So that's the thing, is that if your suppliers are hounding you for payments, if you're well, I mean, don't go down the road of check kiting. That's just bad in general.
Oh
But
my God, yes.
I want to say that Barry was doing all these things is because he ran out of cash in his business. His cash
Hmm.
flow plummeted and he had to find a way to make up the shortfalls, which is why he ended up being in desperate situations. But for a business owner, like while they're growing, like cash flow is absolutely one of those things you want to stay on top of, because it does get a little tricky, especially if you're borrowing money from other places. There's interest. You want to make sure those things are being paid off. So the timing of when your cash is coming in versus when it's going out is really key. And so, like, to stay on top of that, that's why people have budgets. A lot of companies should have budgets, even if you are small. You just have a smaller size budget, maybe a simpler budget. But a budget will help you stay on target and make sure that you don't overexpend, essentially, um, based on the projected growth that you think you're going to have coming in. And budgets are something that you want to look at once a month. It's live. You don't
Hmm.
just set it up in the beginning of the year and then forget about it. You
Yep.
should look at it once a month and compare to how you're actually spending and how much you're actually growing.
And I think to add to that, I think the reason why it's good for monthly is also because every business, in every industry has cycles. There are, good seasons and bad seasons. That's why I think monthly is important, because,
Hmm.
you want to know what's going on in the good time, and then also what's going
Yeah.
on in the lean, the fat times and the lean times.
Yeah, I think with businesses who have seasonal seasons, that made a lot of sense. Just seasons.
but
It's
but I
fine.
do feel like all businesses and all industries will have some form of a season. I mean, frankly, even us in bookkeeping and accounting, there are seasons that are bigger than others, right? Even if it's like just a little bit different than the rest of the months, it's still a season.
It is. I think even within a month, sometimes you'll have seasons.
Right.
Like a lot of times people collect cash in the beginning of the month, right?
Right.
And that you have to make sure it'll extend for the next 30 days and, cover all your payroll for the next, 30 days and things like
Right.
that. So, there are like every business has some seasons to it. But you're absolutely right. There are certain businesses that have very large and long seasons,
Hmm.
especially if there's like 30 or 60 or 90 days in between where you're really slow just because of the business you're in, your industry. So like a lot of trade businesses are this way. Like in the wintertime, it gets really, really slow and you don't have that much cash coming in, but you still have people you've hired that are paid, that needs to be paid regularly,
Hmm.
on salaried or, like 40-hour weeks or anything like that. So you got to figure out how do you keep that float. And, if you're somebody who doesn't look at your budget and you don't look at the next recommendation, which is like cash flow projections, you may, during a high season, have all this cash and be flush with it and you're spending like crazy and not storing away for those winter seasons.
Hmm.
And that's where you're going to get into a lot of trouble for yourself. So
Hmm.
that leads to the cash flow projections, which are, not that complex to do. I know it sounds really complex, but there are templates out there that makes it fairly easy for you to basically project your, kind of project your cash flow week by week. And, if any of
Hmm.
our listeners are interested, if, they would like a copy of a template or something like that, leave us a message or email us or leave us a DM and, we'll shoot you over a copy that we've used with our clients. That works great. And you just watch that every week and you project it out for,
Mhm.
I would like to say 3 to 6 months. And then that way you'll know if you're coming like close to having a cash issue, like
Yep.
weeks before you actually get there. So you have time to
Yep.
prepare. And then last but not least is, of course, stay on top of your financials. You may have a net positive in revenue, but if you still have payment problems, meaning that you still can't make your payments, that may just mean that you're not collecting from your customers fast enough, or you're
Mhm.
spending elsewhere in your business other than paying your bills, right? So that's pretty
Mhm.
indicative of those kind of behaviors, which, you can always turn around. And
Right.
then if, let's say, you have a net negative on your bottom line, then you kind of know you're going to have a pretty big cash problem coming soon. Maybe it's not
Mhm.
today because, depending on how your cash cycle goes and how much money you stocked away. But if you're basically not making a profit and you're losing money on your profit and loss, that
Mhm.
means you're probably going to run into a cash problem in about 30 to 90 days time, most likely,
Right.
unless you have a different funding source, like a line of credit or something. But
Mhm.
in lieu of that, like, you're headed for a wall if you don't do something.
Mhm. So there's a because I know that I always speak in allegories, but I feel like it makes more it makes more sense to me. So hopefully this makes sense to our listeners. But so my husband works in development now, but for many years he worked in construction. And one of the things that I remember him telling me that they do for safety,
Uh-huh.
funny enough, I kind of translated it into business. And so
Okay.
one of the things they do when they dig a hole for a foundation for a house is that every time they go down X amount of feet, let's say every time they go down every like 2 feet, 3 feet, something like that, they create a ledge and then they go down and create a ledge and then go down and create a ledge. So that way, if there is some dirt disturbance that could contribute to some form of a dirt slide, not a landslide, but like a dirt slide, it doesn't all fall in at one time and kill whoever's inside of the hole. It just falls into the one ledge, wherever
Mhm.
that ledge is. So that's basically how you want to prepare your company as well, as long as you're creating
Mm.
those ledges so that if
Yes.
you fall, if something happens, there's
Yeah.
a little bit of a slide. You don't want to engulf and kill whoever's inside.
Which
And
is usually you. You're in the center of
which is
that.
usually you and of course anybody else that works for you because you
Right.
essentially, you kill your business and you kill that person's way of getting income from you. Granted, they can always go get a job, but what about you? I mean, yeah, you could go get a job too, but you've created a landslide when you didn't have to. And
Yeah.
I think that the two of us know enough people out there who run their businesses with the millions in mind, which is fine. Have your millions in
As you
mind,
should.
as you
Yeah.
should.
Have your
Yes,
big audacious goals. And you totally
for sure.
should.
But you should
Yeah.
also pay just as much attention to those little goals where you pay attention to your back office. How and who is doing your bookkeeping? How and who is doing your administrative work? Your operations. Who's your operations manager and how are they doing it? And what is the quality of the person doing it? Investing the money into the people that are structuring the back office is that back office, which I hate the word back office. Really, that's your infrastructure. Really, that's the core and the heart of your business.
Yeah.
And
I think it's like you were saying, it's like you're trying to build a skyscraper, but you didn't even pour the foundation yet. Like, you don't even know how to pour the foundation for a house.
right,
Right? And you're
right.
like, oh, let's build this huge building and it'll be fine. No, it won't really take care of itself. And
No.
that's where you find yourself in these really desperate situations.
Yes.
And it's more common, I think, than people think, because, like I
Mhm.
said, nobody goes into it thinking that they're going to be desperate and you're going to get
Right.
into a desperate place. But the one thing I will tell you is that in business, I feel like the universe has a very odd way of teaching you the lessons you need to learn really, really
Mhm.
hard.
Mhm.
And so more often than not, we do come across a lot of business owners who are in these very desperate situations. And it's a great learning lesson for them of how they get out of it. And we've seen people get out of it. We've also seen people just fall deeper and deeper and deeper into it too.
Yep.
Um,
Yes.
and it's a
Absolutely.
shame because it is
Yep.
a good business on the surface. It
Mhm.
does, it's a great contribution to society, but the owner not not really realizing two things. And Savannah, you let me know if like these are things you've seen or things that or other things on top of this is that I feel like people mix up profit and cash all the time. And they think that if they have profit, they must have cash,
Yep.
where they're actually two very distinct items for an owner to keep their eye on. Now, you have to keep your eye on both, right? Like I was saying, you should look at your profit and loss, but you manage your profit by looking at your profit and loss report, but you manage your cash in other ways because they're not interchangeable and one doesn't always equal the other. And
Right.
cash is more about timing, making sure that when the cash comes in and when the cash goes out, they're timed well, so you don't end up having cash go out before you have enough cash coming in. Profit, I feel like profit's not really so much about timing, but more about performance. Almost like a quality like versus quantity. Like quality meaning
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yeah, are you like charging high enough to actually cover all your costs and then some? And then quantity, like, being that, are you bringing enough business in? Are you stacking enough profits that will end up resulting in cash to pay for your expenses and reinvest in your business and pay for yourself and, spend on all of these things? But it's like you have to look at both the quality and the quantity when it comes to profit.
Yeah.
But again, not the same thing as cash.
Yeah. I kind of
Cash flow.
see it as like big picture, little picture, like
Mm,
cash, little picture, not little picture,
yeah.
but more in the weeds, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Cash is more in the
Yeah.
weeds. Cash is more the
Yeah.
trees. Cash is more the
Yeah.
day to day. Profit is the
Yeah.
bigger picture, is the
Yeah.
forest. So
Yeah.
yeah. And yes, I have. And there have been times when I have been yelled at by people who are like, I thought I had more money. It's like, no, you really don't, because you are seeing this number, but you're not seeing
Mm-hmm.
all of the other. And even though I'm showing you all of these other numbers, these are the things that matter, not just this one thing over here, which is why
Yeah.
it's so important for people to learn really how to read a profit and loss report and the
Yeah.
numbers that are most important, not just the top and the bottom line, but also
Yeah.
balance sheet. I think the balance sheet is where a lot of people get lost and don't.
Well, yeah. And understandably so, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
even for, I know classically trained accountants, meaning they went to school for a degree, like it takes some years to really understand the power behind the balance sheet.
right. And there is a lot of power behind it, and that is something that is not just misunderstood but also ignored oftentimes. And hey, it's no secret. This is the reason why businesses, they say, like, I don't know how high the statistic is, but it's pretty high as to why businesses go out of business within 5 years. Um, and then there's another
Isn't it like
statistic of,
95% of businesses go out in 5 years or something
yes,
along those lines? I have to
yes,
dig up that percentage, but I think I think the Department of like Statistics or something had published that last year. Like
yeah, it's
it's
pretty
pretty
high up there.
high.
And then the
Yeah.
next number I think was for 7 or 10 years or something like that. But I know
Mhm.
why, you know why, and we're talking about the why is because oftentimes these businesses will either grow too fast. It's always a mismanagement of something. They either grow too fast and we're not prepared for the growth, or they grew too fast and realized, oh crap, I'm really good at doing the job, but I'm not good at owning a
The
business.
business part, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
it's part of the business part, I feel like, to manage the profit and manage the cash.
yeah.
And I think that that is a responsibility that a lot of owners don't truly understand that they need to embrace,
Yep.
or somebody in their business has to do it for them. And
Yeah.
they oftentimes push that responsibility unknowingly to others. So I've seen this happen again and again,
Hmm.
where business owners push the responsibility of managing profit to their
Hmm.
employees who may not even be C-level executives. They could be just
Yeah.
managers in a business who wholly have no idea that they're even
Hmm.
responsible for, managing profit, and may not have the experience, because managing people and delivery is not the same thing as managing the profit in your business. And
Hmm.
then managing the cash, I've seen this unreasonably so, always, for some reason, push to bookkeepers or
Yeah.
bookkeeper like positions in the business. And I
Yep.
just, for the record, The responsibility of bookkeepers is to record, not to actually manage your cash flow.
Right.
That is your responsibility as a business owner or somebody else that, in your business that you've kind of ordained with that responsibility. But it's not inherent in a bookkeeper to basically it's not even inherent in an accountant to actually manage your cash. They'll report to you when something is wrong and something is about to go wrong, but who has the authority to act on it? I mean, that person is usually you or somebody else that you've, given that authority to within your business, like explicitly. So like a CEO or a CFO or somebody like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I know more than I don't know people or business owners that request and require that level of responsibility of a bookkeeper or an accountant. They check out. And then when they check back in, they're like, hang on, I thought I had more money. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
And this is not just a small, teeny tiny business issue. This has been a multi-million-dollar client issue. This has been this is an issue.
Yeah.
And as Barry, like, I know for some people who maybe can't imagine, like, how do you get to $280 million and you still don't know what you're doing? It's not hard.
It's not hard. And sometimes the scene behind the curtains, kind of like Wizard of Oz, it's not that pretty. So don't always feel like taking it on face value that a company is doing amazing and they must be making all this money. I can tell you for sure in my many years of peeking behind the curtains, because you can't hide anything you can't hide anything from your accountant or your CFO, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like peeking behind a curtain, that is one big hot mess behind the scenes.
Yep.
So, yeah. So I think that is, and to be quite frank, this is not something that they teach you in business school. This is something you learn by experience as being a business owner. And the sooner you understand that profit and cash is your responsibility as an owner or one of your C-level executives, the, less likely you'll find yourself in a desperate situation.
Right.
The other thing I would say is about like not being ready for growth. People don't think that far ahead. And I think the one thing I see them do is they hire only when they're in a desperate need, meaning that they're so in over their head with how much they have to keep up with. That is when they choose to hire. And that's really tricky because that means that like, how are you ever going to have the time to actually train a new person properly? If you're already like, up to your eyeballs and beyond with things you have to do. Nobody comes as a ready-made package. And, so my advice has always been, and I did this in my own business too, is that, I didn't wait till we're 150% like booked and busy. I foresaw that when we're about 80% is when we hire the next person. Because then you have room, you have breathing space in there to be able to give them the proper training, give them the proper information. And it's tricky because guess what? Like when you do that, usually you have to take a little bit of a step back in how quickly your business is progressing. You may see a little dip in the money that you're netting and bringing home, right? Because you have to pay for the new person and you have to pay for them to get onboarded. It's not instantaneous. So there is some cost associated with that. Now, the great thing is these days, the alternative to hiring a person could also be buying a new software to basically automate some of your processes. And that might get you a quicker return because the software is a little bit easier to onboard. But for the most part, most people are in a people business. If you don't hire people, you may be outsourcing people. Right. Yep. And I'm sure you get called into this all the time, Sevana, is you get called when everything is on fire. And they think that your team can come in and magically just clean it up like, Mr. Clean Magic Eraser or something.
Yes. Yep.
And you're like, whoa, like give us a week. Come on.
That is exactly what happens. And then if we do not match the, the 1 week turnaround, we must suck. And it's like, this took you, it's like when you gain a ton of weight and then you're like, why isn't my trainer making me 30 pounds, less in a month? Like it doesn't work that way, man. Like you gotta put the time in, you've got to put the effort in, you've got to learn new habits, you've got to break old habits. You've got to even discover what your habits are. You might not even know what your habits are. So it is a learning process and it does take a long time. And I think it takes like 90 days for an addict to stop being an addict. So, you got to
over comparing it to these days.
I know. I told you. Just all I do is speak in allegories. But I mean, it's not. It's true. I mean, you really have to give yourself the time, but you also have to forgive yourself. I think that's probably one of the biggest things. And I had that
Yes.
conversation. I had that conversation with an owner last week where she was unaware of a lot of the things that um, we thought she would have been aware of, but it's okay. And I told her, you know what? No one told you you're supposed to know this, and that's okay. Forgive yourself. It's not a,
Well,
oh my gosh, how could you not know that? I didn't want to do that to her. Like, how? Oh,
yeah.
how? No, we're not here to demean. We're not here to condescend. It's
Mm-mm.
about, if you don't know, it's okay that you don't know. That's why Tiffany and I are here. We're here to tell you about this because one of the things that I think you and I lament over all the time is how there's all these great mile in the sky, high in the sky, whatever the saying is, people who tell you about their issues along the way, but never give you the solution. And if they give you a solution, it's a solution that works. If you've got like, if you're a billionaire, like, thank you so much for that. But like, what do I do when I'm bootstrapping mom, trying to run my business in between taking my kids to school and back? Like, that is where the missing piece is. But, that's why we're here. And I want you to first and foremost, our listeners, forgive yourself for anything that you don't know about. And if you knew and you still made the wrong decision, it's okay. Forgive yourself. Don't do it again. Don't do it
Yeah,
again.
and how you come back from a mistake just says everything, because
Exactly.
in business you'll make a lot of mistakes. That's,
For
it
sure.
is a journey, it is a training for yourself too.
Hmm.
Um so like if you make that mistake, like I mean what we're here to do is basically at least let you know and give you warning signs
Yep.
if you're headed down a certain path, and then also give you some tidbits and ideas of how you can turn things around and pivot once you find yourself there, right? If you
Yep.
find yourself right now already feeling the squeeze, meaning that you're like, oh my gosh, like it's great, my business is booming, everybody wants to hire me, but there's not enough me to go around,
Hmm.
right? Then you're already kind of headed for that desperate situation where you're saying yes to all the customers, but you yourself are running around like a mad person
Yep.
and you can't keep up with all of it. And I will tell you, in that situation, you will never find a good hire in time.
Absolutely not.
And people can smell the desperatism in you. You will make desperate hires, and that never ends well. You should
Nope.
hire slow, fire fast. And
Yes.
you can't hire slow if you yourself are in a panic.
Yes. I agree
Yes,
100%. I have made that mistake. I'm a
me
year and
too.
a half later still paying for it.
Oh
So,
yeah, and it is an expensive mistake, and it
oh,
always bites you like
yeah.
way down the road. It's
Yep.
not while you're in it, it is you get reminded of the mistake 6 months even after the person's not there.
Hmm.
Because you're still essentially making up for it. And it is hard cash that goes out. It's hard cost that goes out. And that's not even counting your energy and your emotions that
Yep.
also kind of gets put on to pay the bill for that. So yes.
Right.
So I was gonna say that if you listen to our podcast, maybe you will know a little more of the things you should know. But again, if you find yourself in that position, it's okay. We've all done it here and there. Just pull yourself out of it and do better next time.
Yep. Then this is the reason why we give you guys recommendations, books, apps, and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what we're going to move on to now so that um, we can go along with the saying that goes, put your money where your mouth is. So let's drill down a little bit further to connect what we've discussed here at a granular level for tangible sources that you can take to get you to that next level. So I have some recommendations, but let's
Okay.
start with you, Tiffany.
Yeah. I got a couple books here. I mean, I think a lot of it today, what we talked about, centered around money,
Yeah.
because not having money is what puts you in a desperate situations, and
Uh-huh.
you also went into business to earn money, so a lot of it comes down to money
Yep.
in a sense, and you need money to actually hire people. So a lot of it is about managing money properly to make sure you don't put yourself in that desperate mindset and in a desperate situation trying to make desperate decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, I found a couple of neat books. The first one is called The Money Book. for freelancers, part-timers, and self-employed. The only finance system for people with not so regular jobs. So I kind of like the cheeky little title
Oh, yeah, I
to
like
that
that.
book there. The other one is I think a lot of people have heard about this book. I've read it myself. I don't follow it because it's not quite for me.
Yeah.
But I can see the principles behind it, and I can see why it does work for a lot of people, which is why I'm including it here, which is Profit First, the book
Okay.
Profit First, and the methodology behind how to basically use your profits properly. And the last book I have here is Conquering Cash Flow. So this is a complete guide to small business cash flow management. I think that kind of speaks for itself. But again, all these books I chose are very much in layman terms that when they
Mhm.
speak to their readers, which I think is so key because we don't expect business owners to be a finance or a accounting guru by any
Right.
means. You go be what you're good at, but
Mhm.
learn enough about this to be really dangerous.
Right. I agree. So my recommendations are more talking to people. I
That's good.
I really recommend that if you do not already have a bookkeeper or an accountant, that you do hire one. And I say this all the time, that you should hire someone that is part of a firm, not just a singular person. Not that they are not fantastic. I'm sure they are. It's just that the firm will be holding a higher level of liability insurance and um, can cover errors and omissions better. I don't know if that came out right, but that's what I mean. You just want to work with somebody who's going to be a little bit more insured. And so, what you should do with that person is ask them to go through your balance sheet together and ask them all of the things that you don't understand, line by line. There are no dumb questions in my mind, except for the ones that do not get questioned. So, you have to ask all of the questions. What does this mean? What does that mean? Of course, they're not giving you financial advice. They're just giving you the definitions of these things, what that means and where to find them. But in this case, you will then know what they mean, how to find them on your own. And same thing for your profit and loss report. There are going to be lines there like your taxes, your liability, or not your liability, sorry, your taxes, how much you spend maybe on marketing or how much you might spend on payroll. Compare that to how much you make. What does your AR look like? What does your AP look like? Have a good meeting to go line by line on all of the words that you don't understand so that you can better understand what those words mean. Next, if you are in a place where you know that you are going to need an admin or that you should hire an admin, do not think that an admin is just a 1960s receptionist answering the phone. I always consider the admin the person, the gatekeeper, the person who's basically the mother of the company. They are taking care of so many things for you to make your life easier and your business run smoothly. Hire someone who can be fantastic as either an administrator or as an operations manager. But how do you hire that person? First, write down what you expect them to be able to do. Then write down all of the things that you do in a day on your busiest day, and then highlight those things you don't want to do or those things that you don't feel a owner of a company should be doing. That's how you will identify what that role will look like, because it doesn't make sense to hire somebody and they look at you and go, okay, well, what do you want me to do? And you go, because that's a waste of time and money. And that happens a lot where people hire people and have no idea what that person's supposed to be doing. So, that is my recommendation. Of course, it goes further than that. With everyone that you hire them based on your expectations and then articulate those expectations. If you do not already have a schedule of payments, a schedule of receivables, create that or make that the job of the operations manager or an account manager. Whomever it is that you've hired, you need to know how much money comes in, how much money goes out. You need to know what these lines mean in your financial reports. And that's going to help you when you have conversations with your loan provider with your financial advisor, with your bank. Like you said, Tiffany, you don't need to know everything, but you need to know enough to be dangerous. Otherwise, you become dangerous and like an illegal.
That is a good point. Otherwise, you are the danger.
You are the danger, and then you become an illegal danger and without even knowing it, which, again, I will say has happened when clients did things they didn't even know were illegal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to stop doing that. And they're like, oh, I didn't know it was illegal. And I'm like, you know what? I get why you don't know this is illegal. I get it. It's not general knowledge, but stop doing it. Just stop.
I think that, like I said, I don't believe Barry probably got into this thing, thinking I'm going to go scam everybody out of their
For
money.
sure.
It's something that he fell into, and it kept spiraling him until he had no choice to go all the way.
Yeah,
And you can argue his ego, whatnot. I mean, we obviously didn't have a conversation with him to know what he was thinking, but like you said, sometimes it's really unintentional.
yeah,
And you just don't want to find, but just because it's unintentional doesn't mean that you don't have the liability or the responsibility. So we
exactly.
hope that you will not find yourself in this position.
Yep.
And if you have any kind of doubt, or you just want somebody to be a sounding board, I mean, feel free to drop us a message and see if, we can kind of
Oh,
help you figure that out.
always happy to help. And with that, please join us for our next episode where we will discuss how to grow out of the owner-operator role. Stay tuned, and please show us your support by following us on your preferred podcast platform, social media, and YouTube. We'd love for you to also share our episodes. All of our links will be posted below, and until next time, mind the business behind your business, because all great successes start small.